Welcome to the Ask for the Skinny podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Sam Kabert. Sam, welcome to the show. Please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. First off, thank you so much for having me. I love what your show is all about, the topics you explore, and it's just so needed, For me, my journey in having a midlife crisis started with a quarter life crisis when I was 25 years old. And that was some things that I worked through. But when I turned 31 years old, that was truly, I know, to me, age isn't really, it's just a number, put it that way, when we're talking about these crises. For me, it was 31 years old. At the time, I was in Silicon Valley. I had just built my business up to a seven-figure business, and this is key, while working less than 4 hours a day. So in a lot of ways, I had financial freedom. I didn't have employees, just virtual assistants. So I could do what I want when I wanted to do. I had built my dream life. On top of that, I was 31 years old and I was named to Silicon Valley's 40 under 40 list. And I couldn't even receive that. I didn't even feel like I was worthy of that. I was also named to my industry's rising stars that year. And all of this led to a numbing depression. Like it got so bad with sleepless nights, yet I still was like, I don't want to say full of energy during the day, like, oh, let me work out. It was just like this alertness, almost like feeling like you're sleepwalking. So for me, that was the beginning of my journey of really going deep onto mental and emotional health. And I ended up doing something called a breath work journey, just breathing with myself or with a facilitator, just in and out with the breath for about an hour and a half. And with that experience, I literally felt reborn. After that, I changed my entire life. I moved out of Silicon Valley to Santa Cruz. I started to become a teacher or a student, I should say, of the universe. And from there, I've just completely transformed my life. I'm a different person. Now, what I focus on is mental and emotional health and helping other people that have went through similar things, whether it's chasing success, achieving what they had only to feel more empty, or people realizing, hey, it's time for me to start addressing my unprocessed traumas. That's what I focus on now.
That's amazing. I like your story. You went through a similar um, process than I did. So I was a bit older when I discovered that the goals that I'm chasing are not my own, are society induced.
Yeah.
And everything stopped making sense somehow. And somehow the devil is when you go bankrupt, and somehow the devil shows themselves when you make it. The most important thing, or I would like to talk, is we have clients in my business. Most of them are female clients that are trying, so professionals in midlife that are trying to do something with their life to advance. Um, because we're all both men, I would like to ask you, why is there um, such a rare event or not happening often that a man starts working on themselves? Why are women so much more pragmatic and they start looking for help? They start looking for, um, let's say, therapists and stuff like that. And that there is not so much stigma about going to therapist as it is if you are a really successful man. What's your take on that?
Yeah, Peter, that's a fantastic question. These days I look at everything from what I call a soul life perspective, a soul life mindset, if you will. In 2022, I wrote a number one best-selling book called Soul Life Balance, a reframe of work-life balance, basically where we reclaim our mental and emotional health by prioritizing it, frankly. And I call it the inner world. We could look at the archetypal energies of yin and yang or yang. And yin is that inner world of mental, emotional health, along with connection to something greater than this human experience. And the outer world is how we move through the world with obligations and responsibilities. So that's soul life balance. And in the past year, I've kind of reframed the way I think of soul life balance to really soul life mindset. Because what I realized is everything I do in my life, I approach it from this lens of soul life, inner world, outer world, yin, yang, or we could think of it as our analytical mind making up our prefrontal cortex versus our limbic brain, which is our emotional brain. So to answer this question, I think we can look at it from two lenses. One, we could say like that yang energy, that outer world, that analytical, logical discernment, all of that. We can be like, okay, conditioning and programming of our society. Times are changing now, but for a lot of your listeners, and even for my generation as well, I'm 37 now, like we were grown up to not feel, we were grown up and taught to not feel. Like you express yourself as a child, you start to shut down, you start to disassociate because you're taught from a young age. So that happens both to men and women. So that's conditioning and programming of society. Things are starting to shift a lot for a lot of different families and parents, the way they raise their kids. So that would be like the outer world yang type analytical answer to what you're talking about. Then the yin, the inner world, the intuition and the connection of flow and all receptivity, well, women are just more connected naturally. For the most part, generally speaking, they're more connected to their inner world of their mental and emotional state. So it's, in a sense, more natural for a woman to understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and be connected with their intuition. So again, like, I think it's really healthy to look at it from both lenses and not just like point fingers and be like, oh, it's the programming and conditioning of society, or it's because women were born this way with this special gift. It's a yes, like, hey, these things are true, but also if you start to create that story, then you're going to limit yourself. That doesn't need to be your story anymore,
Yeah, I'm fascinating how you explain these concepts. It's so simple and it makes complete sense. That is where I'm amazed. And would you say that regardless of the sex, the gender, we are underappreciating our inner world, and we do not expect it, and it's often because it's often named subconscious. it's uh, it's considered to be less than conscious.
know?
What's your take on the how important is conscious and subconscious?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's been a lot of stigma around mental health. And again, like that's changing. People are more open to speaking about like mental health type of concerns, right? But the new wave is emotional health. Like it's great that we're talking about like we're not as afraid to say, hey, mental health is important to me. Like before, it was like you're prioritizing your mental health. Like, are you broken? Is there something wrong with you? And like that stigma is starting to change, which is great. That's amazing. However, like the new wave is emotional health, because think about it, anytime you make a decision, you do it based off of feelings, or take any of the pleasures in life. Why do you like those things? Whether it's food, it's your romantic relationships, what's happening in the bedroom, all of these sorts of things. It's because how it makes you feel. Yet we are so afraid to talk about our feelings because there's a very large stigma around feelings. So I would say like what's most important to focus on right now, if you're listening to this and being like, oh yeah, this is making sense and things are starting to click for me and all of that, where I would encourage you to really lean into is not just the mental health, but the emotional health. And you're right, the subconscious mind makes up 95% of our awareness. That's everything that we don't have access to. A lot of people are familiar with that. Some people may not be familiar with the fact that in any given moment, we are processing 2 million bits of information, and only 126 of those bits make it to our conscious awareness. So when we are experiencing something where we're feeling stressed, we're feeling triggered, or we're feeling tired, any of this at all, by simply understanding that we are processing 2 million bits and only 126 make it to our conscious awareness, it now gives us the ability to pause, to reflect, and to ask a simple question of like, what am I missing here? Or where can I get a new 126, if you will?
Amazing. As a business person, you will be the one to address the question. And I believe that most of my clients, before they come to me, they have huge problem how to explain to their coworkers and their family why they need a coach, a mentor, a therapist.
Mm.
What would be the best excuse? How should we frame it in order to make it look, let's say, fashionable, or something that is in trend, that we need we really need this, let's say, emotional and mental health. And I would also like your take on a lot of people, especially technical person, they read books. And you mentioned that the breath work, you used facilitator. And I believe that facilitator and accountability partnership is extremely important when we start on our journey of self-development. So how should we frame that we're using therapist? How
Yeah.
should we frame it as a performance tool? How should we frame it that our society will be better if we, as a CEO or C-level executive or investor, if we start investing our time and money in therapy, in getting to know ourselves better? How would you frame it?
Yeah, I think for me, the words that we choose to use carry a very strong energetic charge because that hits our subconscious. And we may not be intentionally choosing the words that we are using. And if we're saying, hey, I need a coach, a therapist, et cetera, and now I need an excuse to have a coach or a therapist, whatever it might be, we're carrying guilt and shame. I'm not speaking for you. I'm not speaking for anyone listening. I'm speaking in mass generalizations. A lot of times when we talk about excuses versus reasons, the excuse is going to have a lower frequency of guilt, shame, uncertainty, lacking conviction. However, if we have a reason, we raise our frequency to confidence, to purpose, to conviction. And one of my coaches, Gabrielle and Brian Boucher, I love their definition of conviction. And that is conviction is the unreasonable certainty that what you're doing is right and worth it. And I've adopted that mentality over the past couple of months, being like, wow, I've really lacked a conviction in what I'm doing. And not having conviction leads me to feel less confident. Even though I feel confident in what I'm doing, now that I've adopted this mentality of what I'm doing is right and worth it, that really helps me to raise my vibration even higher so that if I'm looking for more support, and I'm speaking from firsthand experience because I definitely invest in myself with business coaches, resilience coaches, nervous, all of the things, right? And I don't look at it as an excuse for it. I look at it as a reason because I know this is an investment so that I can feel my best, so that I can perform my best. And it's simple little mindset shifts like that to just notice the language that we're using because these words that aren't serving us keep us stuck. And if we can shift them to empowering words, then that's going to make all the difference. And that's the same way of speaking to a spouse. If someone's like, a husband's talking to their wife or a wife is talking to a husband or et cetera, whatever the situation is, just their partner, and they want to explain why they believe this new coach or therapist is going to help them. Even if they don't use the word excuse, if they're holding on to any residual energy in their subconscious, they're going to come approach it from a place that's not going to make sense for them. So they won't be able to articulate it to the partner, and the partner will hear it and they'll be like, what are you talking about? Versus if they are full of conviction and certainty, then they're going to come from a place of confidence. The partner will support them and they'll have a better experience in working with that therapist or coach.
Thank you. That is a great insight. I have another excuse that I coined
Mhm.
because I used to be in investment banking, and everything was about return on investment at that
Mhm.
time, and it still is to a large degree. Now they're making it softer with ESG and stuff like that. But anyway, everything is about return on investment. Would you agree, judging from your personal experience, that investing in ourselves, investing in a coach, a therapy, a program, gets us the best returns in the long run, because we, on top of the money that we'll make, we'll have a better life. And especially if we want to align ourselves to the best life we can live, working on ourselves, get a coach, a mentor, a therapist is one of the best investments that we can do in our lifetime. And disclaimer, it was the best investment for myself.
Yeah, and myself as well. I totally agree with that. And I think if someone's just solely focusing on a business coach, that's going to help their bottom line, their ROI, and there's not any support with their mental emotional state from that coach or another coach or therapist, then they're missing out. And the reason is your story, my story. Look at all these supreme athletes, from Michael Phelps to Simone Biles to Super Bowl winners like Steve Weatherford. You know, all these people have achieved the Mount Everest of their whatever their arena was that they were playing in. Yet when they got there, they're like, huh, something still feels off. And that's the story of a few of the people I mentioned. It sounds like yourself, definitely myself. And the reason is because we weren't prioritizing our mental and emotional health. So yes, if you're an entrepreneur, a business person, a leader, executive, or whatever, and you're looking to hire a coach in business, that makes so much sense. And that's super easy to justify, right? Because we can just look at the ROI. It's very, very hard to justify sometimes if you haven't tasted it before, why you need a coach to help you with your mindset and your emotional health. But once you get to this place of success and you realize you haven't been prioritizing your inner world, then everything is going to crumble and you're going to have to rebuild. It's an archetype. It's a story after story. So many people have gone through this. And this is why I'm so passionate about the work that I do, the work that you do, because we're not just helping people make more money and make more money so that they can live their life more, but also reconnect with how they actually feel so that they're in the journey and enjoy the whole process. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Um, so you're all about a soul life balance.
Mhm.
Can you please share the advice that you believe is the most important for someone that has just started the journey of, let's say, self-discovery or individualization according to Jung?
Mhm.
What would be your number one advice to get your soul life balance? What is the first step that we need to take?
I love the quote, practice makes practice. You know, I first heard this quote when I was in a yoga class. It was an outdoor class on the beach. I was standing there in Warrior Two, you know, like kind of like that pose where it's like you're surfing. And I remember the instructor saying, practice makes practice. And I nearly fell over in the sand in this asana, this posture, because I was like, practice makes practice. It's practice makes perfect. And I was like really deep in the beginning stages of my journey. And in that moment, it clicked for me because I was able to see that bit of programming of practice makes perfect and how focused I was not only on the end destination, but perfection. So in soul life balance, one of the core pillars is to focus on the journey as opposed to the destination. And we can do that through prioritizing our daily habits and behaviors for our inner and our outer world. And when I went through my own yoga teacher training, our instructor, Dakota Shea, said something that blew my mind. We were out there in Costa Rica, this beautiful yoga shala, looking over in the jungle, immersed in the jungle, looking over the ocean, hearing the monkeys howling and all the things, the geckos and all that. It was amazing. And Dakota Shea said this about the yogic philosophy of sadhana, which sadhana is to be in pursuit of. It's the cliche of being in the journey. A lot of people talk about this, but it's how do you actually do that? Again, how we do that is focusing on our daily habits and behaviors that support both inner and outer world. So what Dakota said was, to name your ultimate potential is to limit your ultimate potential. And I'll say that again, to name your ultimate potential is to limit your ultimate potential. So tying this back to my journey of like building this business, these awards, and looking at some of these supreme athletes, a lot of times we may not like consciously be aware that we're naming our ultimate potential, but we're doing it on a subconscious level. So now what I do instead is I just have at the top ultimate potential. Then I have different categories: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, all these sorts of categories, and be like, who do I want to embody in these categories? And what I focus on is embodiment. What are my core values? How do I want to show up in the world? If I focus on those, if I embody those, then I'm in alignment and everything else falls into place from there.
That's amazing. So embodiment is more important than the end goal, and the way is also important. So practice is just incredible insight for me, and I hope for our listeners, that the journey is often more important than the destination. And we have to fine tune ourselves to enjoy the journey and be on the journey that we enjoy. Maybe if we spin it a bit, in order to be successful, but not successful in, let's say, societal induced goals, but successful in the life that our inner self wants us to be.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, success can be really easily reframed to be like, okay, in the morning when I wake up, do I feel good versus am I dreading all the things? Like, am I waking up with clarity, with calm, excitement about the day? It doesn't have to be like you pop out of bed and first thing you're like, look, I'm going to attack the day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, right? But like in that first hour of waking up, are you ramping up to feel excited? And when you put your head down on the pillow, are you proud of how the day was? And just looking at day by day, because when you go from day by day, then you can go to moment to moment awareness. And that's how we build presence. And that's really what we're after here.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for all these insights. Please let us know where can our listeners reach out and find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Peter. This has been a fun conversation. You've asked a lot of questions. There's some things that I talked about that I talk about a lot, but there's a few other things that came up that I'm like, oh, I like that. That was new and different. So I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you for everyone listening. If you want to go deeper with me, the best way to do so is to join my breath club. It's completely free. You can go to samkabert.com/club, samkabert.com/club. And in that link, it's free. All you do is you put your name, your email there, and then every single week I lead live via Zoom breathwork sessions on Zoom. And then there's also a whole bank of pre-recorded breathwork exercises. So if you want to connect with me, go deeper. If this is resonating, definitely invite you to join the Breath Club. And Peter, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.